Hey Nancy,
Hey Adam, how are you?
good. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
It's very nice to be asked, and I appreciate your time too.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this call. You're one of the people when we actually first started in the industry 10 years ago, I looked up to and learned a lot from.
Thank you.
Um, so I've been really looking forward to this and excited to talk to you and have a broad discussion on your agency and the industry. So the intent
Thank you.
of
That
these,
means a lot.
thank you. The intent of these calls is just to have a conversation. What we want to do is we want to highlight some of the amazing people that work in this field
Hmm.
and talk about things, just some realistic kind of true dialogue around what to expect, what people should know, and get into even bigger picture items. So let's just see where it goes. How does that sound?
Okay. That sounds great. That sounds great. So I think it's important for people to understand who I am and where I work. My name is Nancy Block, and I'm a registered nurse. I worked in OB and actually all care at a women's hospital in Chicago for 17 years, and I took care of patients who were high risk, low risk, going through fertility treatment, outpatient surgery for fertility treatment, which people don't do anymore because it wasn't very successful. But I have a lot of medical background, and I think that's important when we are reviewing profiles. And this is my second agency that I founded, and it's called Private Label Surrogacy. And I can be reached at Nancy at privatelabelsurrogacy.com, or our team can be reached at info at privatelabelsurrogacy.com, or team at privatelabelsurrogacy.com. And after working with egg donors and surrogates for 15 years, I sold my first agency. I worked for the agency that purchased me and my staff and learned business development, which I had never done because I was a nurse. I was in nursing school. I didn't know anything about business. So I did learn a lot. I traveled the world and met some lovely people and spoke about egg donation and surrogacy. Now I just primarily do surrogacy, but I do help people source egg donors, and if they can't find one through their fertility clinic.
That's wonderful. Nancy, you mentioned your medical background. Can you expand on
Mhm.
that?
Sure. Um, I went to nursing school and I'm an RN, and I have worked in the field of medicine for, oh gosh, if I say how long, then you're going to know how old I am. But let's just say I worked at a large hospital in Chicago, Northwestern. We did about 25,000 deliveries a year, which is one of the largest in the country. Saw a lot, high risk, low risk. And so when I look at a chart, when I look at an application, I can see a red flag that might be very clear. It might be very clear to me. It might not be clear to somebody else. We also have an executive director who works with us, who is an MD, who reviews all of our records, available records for surrogates, potential surrogates, and writes a summary because we want to make sure that we're taking care of people who are taking care of babies. And obviously, our priority is to make sure that the surrogate meets criteria or exceeds criteria and is safe. And then the baby, obviously, that these parents have been praying for and hoping for, will be taken care of by the best babysitter in the world.
Well, we've had the pleasure of working alongside Private Label as the escrow provider with mutual clients. Like I said, you all run a great agency. Can you
Thank
tell
you.
me, I understand that your medical background is key to your success and to your client's success. What else are you proud of about your approach or the agency or your team?
I'm always proud of my team because my team is very, excuse me, my team is very experienced. They've worked as coordinators with other agencies, and they came to us because they liked how we worked. And they've also been surrogates, which I think helps. It's not necessary. I don't think being a surrogate is absolutely necessary to be a case manager, but they do understand that perspective from a surrogate's point of view. I can't say that I'm an intended parent, a former intended parent, which is unlike most agencies. I come at this from the other side, from a medical point of view, and I just want to make sure that everyone's taken care of. I did a lot of patient education when I was working at the hospital too. So, and I love that. So I do educational videos. We're doing one. We just did one with an embryologist and now you, and how important escrow is and how important all the facts are that we talk to intended parents and surrogates about, because someone once told me, and I will always remember this, you remember about 27% of what you hear the first time you talk to somebody. So I want to make sure that our surrogates and our intended parents know that they can reach out to us multiple times and we're responsive. And that's important because being responsive is what they don't have sometimes from a clinic, because clinics are short-staffed and busy.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned your team. I always say there's two joys in running a business, right? It's solving a meaningful purpose. And the purpose we solve in different capacities is helping
Mhm.
helping people build their family safely through third party, which, gosh, what could be more important or more impactful? And then the second beauty of it is building a team that you get to grow and see thrive as well. Because if you don't have that strong team to execute consistently, you can't deliver on the purpose that you set out to, or the problem you set out to solve. So,
They like if I can count on my team because we do work as a team. I'm not like the boss lady, even though I'm in charge and I started the program. And this is my second agency, and I did something in between. Um, but I really count on these women to advise me as well, because I don't know what it's like to be a surrogate from an emotional point of view. I do know from a medical point of view, and I know people, and I think I'm intuitive. Um, and I don't think I'm intimidating, and I want people to ask me questions. I work with people that I know, referrals, family, friends, which is very meaningful. It says people trust me, and I don't spread the word. I'm working with someone now that a family, actually two people now that a family member knows, and my family doesn't know. It's important to maintain confidentiality and to make sure that our clients and our surrogates understand that what we're doing for them is best practice. And we want to make sure that they know that our case managers and our nutritionists and everyone else who works with us is on their team and that we are looking out for their best interest.
absolutely. We see so often, like most journeys go really well, right? When
Yeah.
journeys have challenges, that's when the team of the agency and the team of professionals working with that journey get to really, and I always say, kind of earn our stripes.
Mhm.
But if the case is with a strong set of professionals and a strong team of the agency, everything is more easily navigated, right? Especially if there's trust.
Exactly. And of course, when everything runs smoothly, agencies don't have to be as involved. We are still involved anyway. But I always say to my staff, my team, my group, my tribe, that this is a mutual decision that we all make together, and we all help each other when someone's not available and we're responsive. But the most important thing is that we give the information, the care, the warmth, and the responsiveness, and are just an ear for people to talk to, and we listen. And that's important because everyone who's going through this, we believe, needs someone to be a good listener.
Absolutely. it's certainly an emotional process, right? Um,
It, it is. And I can't imagine, I think of all the babies that I took care of and the parents that I took care of as a nurse and the education that I did. And I rewrote standards for our units and, did a lot when I was working in the hospital. And I just, I never tell anybody that I understand what they're going through because I don't. I understand from a different perspective, but also if I don't know the answer to a question, I will say to them, I'm not certain. Let me find out for you. So I give you accurate information.
Absolutely. Well, that's a good segue. I'm going to ask you, what if you had to pick a few pieces of advice or things you wish most parents knew before starting a journey, what would it be?
Oh gosh.
It's hard, right? Like it's hard to
It's a
pick one.
yeah, it's a full-time job for intended parents. I do talk to a lot of intended parents that interview multiple agencies. And some people say they get the sales approach, they get the I don't have time for you approach. They convey, and I don't ask them to divulge who they're talking to, but I do ask them what information have you been given first? And then I go into, or Mark and I, because Mark is our MD and our executive director, we meet with intended parents together because that duo does work. And he explains what he does, and I explain what I do. Um, for intended parents, I think it's important for them to have quick response time because when you're going through this process, you don't want to have to wait. And I like to know what someone knows so that I don't repeat everything, even though our agency may run differently than somebody else. These questions that they need to know, they don't know. So what we do is we bring up questions that they might ask or that they should know. What happens in the case of this? What happens if this happens? What happens if my surrogate backs up? What happens if I don't become pregnant and the contract says that I'm going to go through 3 transfers and the surrogate's on board, but she doesn't become pregnant? Is there a refund policy? And there should be in every contract, in my opinion. Felt that way for a long time. And um, how long will it take to find the right surrogate? I advise intended parents to think about the top 3 points that are most important to them, whether it be location, whether it be expense, whether it be, has she been a surrogate before? And I have very strong feelings on that one too. I don't think it's
Please, please,
necessary.
please share.
Okay. I'm a proponent for someone who's had fewer pregnancies versus someone who's been through either a surrogacy journey or multiple pregnancies. The reason being, every journey is different. Even if you've had, I can give you a for instance, we have a surrogate right now working with a lovely couple. Her last journey was not terrific. The couple that she worked with, one of the partners was not very communicative, and the other was, I would say, not very hands-on. So, and that's being kind. So it, she was really on the fence about doing another journey. She could not be happier now because she's working with a couple that's attentive, that wants to look out for her well-being. And even though she's been through pregnancies, not multiple pregnancies. And like I said, each journey is different. Some surrogates who've been through a journey have different requests for the next journey. They know more, usually. And then there are some surrogates that are agency shopping for whether it be financial remuneration or the experience or the location or the type of parents that they work with or availability. There are various reasons for that. But I am a proponent for someone who's had fewer pregnancies because the uterus is a muscle. It's stretched out. It's been used. I worry about somebody bleeding. I worry about somebody contracting early, going into preterm labor. I worry about all the medical things that I know that can happen with multiple pregnancies. And even though ASRM has guidelines and SEEDS has recommendations and guidelines, um, I don't always follow them. I sometimes do like to go under what their numbers are.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it makes me comfortable. I want to sleep at night. I want to make sure that there's not going to be a surrogate that's going to go into preterm labor. I was just reading something on a Facebook professional page about a surrogate who's got migraines with an aura, and that's really contraindicated. It's not for necessarily only for the baby, but it's for the surrogate. So she's upset that she was declined, but her safety is important, and that's what we look at.
Beyond being a potential surrogate, she's also a mother and a human, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, we want her to go home the same way she started.
Absolutely. That's a great segue to what's your advice to surrogates or your top things when you speak to surrogates, what they should consider.
I think many of the same things that I just spoke about. I think
Yeah.
response time is important. Support is heavily stressed. At Private Label Surrogacy, we want to make sure that they have support people. We are supportive. We can advise them. We have a nutritionist, we have counselors, not on staff with us, the nutritionist is, but we give them advice, we give them time. We give them probably an hour and a half to do an intake eval and talk to them about experiences, talk to them about the what ifs, talk to a surrogate about her wishes because this is her journey and we want to make sure that everything she's looking for is number one, realistic, and number two, supported, and that she is heard.
Those are great advice. I always think of surrogates as like superheroes, right? I think once they become a surrogate and help a family, like
Right.
what they've done is just absolutely incredible for that to help build that family. So I
And
think
they're
that,
trusting us to introduce them. We don't match anybody. We introduce our surrogates to intended parents who are like-minded. And we want the surrogate to feel that sense of trust with us because if they don't trust us, they're not going to want to work with us. They're not going to want to work with the intended parents that we may introduce to them. And I would say 99 to almost 100% of the introductions that we make work the first time, work out to be a match.
that's a great percentage. Trust really is the foundation, right? And I guess from my vantage point, we just notice that if there's trust in the professionals and in each other between the surrogate and the parents, the journeys go so much better. If things aren't, I don't go exactly as planned, things things go better. If a parent and surrogate trust the agency to have that conversation and know that the agency has their best interest at heart, it makes it easier to navigate challenges. We see
I
it.
agree.
We see it even in, the day to day. 99% of journeys go beautifully, right? Or pretty well. Or,
Hopefully.
and it's the 1% that are challenging. And usually the ones that are challenging is, yeah, there could have been issues that made it harder, but not always. Sometimes there's just the lack of trust and some challenging personalities that makes the whole journey hard. So I always tell people, take time to select an agency and a team of professionals, your lawyers, your doctors, your escrow company that you can feel confident and trust.
Right.
because you're hiring this team to guide you and manage this process for you and support you.
Mhm.
You need to trust them and let them do their work, right? Because we see when that goes well, and like for example, when there's an issue with escrow that could be a complex or a gray area in the contract, we've seen it probably 1,000 times between us talking to the agency and then kind of explaining the likely outcome, or then maybe bringing in the attorneys, all the professionals, right? Some are all the professionals.
Right.
It's
It's a
the
group. It's a
yeah,
it's a team effort.
yeah, the answer is usually solvable or quite common, or there's usually a very clear right direction. Where I see it go wrong is when maybe the parents of the surrogates don't trust the professionals and they fight it, and or they take the wrong approach of fighting that issue out amongst each other
Mhm.
and damaging the relationship. But if they just trust in the professionals to get work through that and preserve that relationship to be about the beautiful journey, the journeys go much better. What's been your experience in that?
I think, as you're talking, I'm thinking about things pre-COVID and things post-COVID.
Interesting.
And I think pre-COVID, we met with more people in person. I used to meet with just about everybody in person. I used to go to appointments with surrogates and donors. We don't work with donors anymore. We help people find donors, but we don't work with donors. But I used to go to all these appointments and very hands-on. And since the pandemic, the Zoom has taken over, Teams has taken over
Here
video
we are.
conferencing.
Here we are on Zoom.
Exactly. I mean, I would meet people, give them a hug. I'm that kind of person. Um, Not after COVID, but and the doctors then decided that they really didn't want us in the waiting room because it was too crowded. So we had to abide by what they wanted, but we still need to convey to people that we can't touch and feel and see and um, be with and make eye contact with. Trust us. We do that by talking with them, giving them time. We always refer surrogates to previous surrogates that so that they can talk about their experience with our agency, PLS, Private Label Surrogacy. We do the same with intended parents. I have intended parents that contact us to tell us that they want to be an ambassador for other intended parents, which for me makes me feel incredible. That means that they're happy. And these aren't and these aren't people that have had um, you know, total smooth sailing the whole time. These are realistic expectations. They talk about what's happened with them. They want to help people. They want to talk about what some of the psychologists do, and that is what is realistic in a journey. You don't know how your relationship will evolve with your surrogate, but we're there if there are issues. We're there if anyone needs to talk to us about any aspect of what's going on. And I think that builds trust too. We don't push people aside. We, our case managers have actually, I have one case manager, when she goes on vacation, she works. I'm like, I never told her to do that. I never asked her to do that. I'd never expected her to do that. But she cares that much about her clients and her patients and her surrogates. That's what she does. And that says an awful lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that picking a team that you trust is probably one of the most important things you'll do.
Right,
And if you pick the right team, your journey will be better. If you fight the team the whole way, or you ultimately land with personalities you don't like, you won't. It'll be a hard journey. The
right,
and the foundations of trust are really quite simple. I think trust is built on being somebody that you like, meaning you connect with
right,
socially, personally. It feels good. It feels authentic when you meet with them. This is that's likable to me. Secondly, somebody that is truly an expert, so you can trust in their expertise. And then thirdly, somebody that you believe is going to be able to execute or do the work. right?
Right.
And I think your process of saying, "Hey, meet me." I can't meet you in person anymore, not always, right? But
I have gone to a few appointments that I've been allowed to go to. I've gone to some baby showers that were around here. Well, we're based in Illinois, but we work in every state that's surrogate friendly. Um, but yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, there are different ways that we learn and we have to evolve according to what people need. And I think intuition and a good ear are really helpful.
for sure.
And sincerity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, You mentioned kind of the way some people feel when they talk to you earlier, right? Like they thought they got a sales pitch or dismissed of like, you can't have us, or, like
Right,
I think people should follow their gut on what team feels right to them, right? Which agency or escrow company provider feels right to them and
right.
when they look
I
at the details.
agree. And your gut, when I was working with egg donors and I started out after being a nurse for so long, you do have an intuitive sense and you know if something isn't quite right. You may not be able to pinpoint it, but you do know if something isn't quite right. And for those people that are not as responsive as they should be, or are asking pointed questions where you know that they've either not been totally open with you about an experience that they had, we will find it. I mean, we'll find it in records, we'll find it in a background check, we'll find it in a psyche eval, hopefully before then.
Right.
Um, but you do have a gut feeling and you have to go with your gut. And that's what we tell intended parents as well as surrogates. You have to go with who you're comfortable with. I don't make people feel guilty about choosing another agency. I only wish them well and want their success and their happiness. And then some people do come back to us. Um, and that means an awful lot too. But we understand that we're not a fit for everybody, but we hope that we're a fit for the right people that come to us that want our help.
No, that's great. That kind of open approach is meaningful. So let's kind of step forward to once a journey's underway, right?
Yeah.
What advice or thoughts do you have on advising people on how to overcome common challenges or disagreements or misunderstandings that can occur during a journey?
Like communication with the surrogate, for instance,
Yeah,
or
like tension that can occur or communication issues. There's unlimited examples of things that could come up. What advice do you give people of what's the best approach to overcome common challenges?
we remind them multiple times that we are here to be that voice that they can talk with. And if they are uncomfortable conveying something to the surrogate, and I say this to parents, all the intended parents all the time, if there's an issue, please reach out to us. And if we can't help you, we know who can help you, either a psychologist or an attorney. If there's a communication breakdown, we we do get involved at times, and sometimes, obviously, through texting and through emails, messages really aren't conveyed with the same emotion that you would have face to face. So we always try and encourage that. That's one of the first things I say to people. Communication is really important. When you start with good communication and you're open as well, then it usually works well. We also give intended parents and surrogates realistic expectations that, you're not going to be best friends immediately. And even if you have a passion for what you're doing, it doesn't always mean that everything will be smooth. But that's why we do what we do, and they can reach out to us and we can help smooth those barriers.
A word you've said multiple times here that I just want to call out because it couldn't be more true is expectations. having proper expectations going into your journey, which is often set by your agency, is so important.
It also can be very frustrating for people. We all know things have changed in the last few years since COVID began, and there are a lot of companies that are short-staffed or not hiring and fewer workers, and it's harder to get things done. It's harder to communicate with a person, and that's why we feel very strongly about being available as people, because expectations from a fertility clinic aren't the same, because most of the time those transmissions are sent through an email or a portal. And
Yep.
so there's that lack of intimacy. And you
Right.
do need intimacy when you do a surrogate journey.
Yeah, I keep the other common thread here is just how different it is when people don't get to meet face to face. And I always think back to experience I had when I was in banking. I had a service person on my team, and the moment I made the decision, these are in-house in the office folks who usually don't go meet clients. As
Yeah,
soon as I made the decision that had never been made before to take that person with me to meet all the clients they worked with, the whole dynamic changed. This person became, rather than a voice over a phone back then, before all this cool video stuff,
right.
to a human being, and they were treated completely different. And everything changed. And I think we have to remember, obviously, it'd be ideal if everybody can meet in person. It's not always possible, but when they can't meet in person, you have to
Mhm.
put in that extra effort and just acknowledge that as humans, until we meet people in person, it's harder, right? We
It
don't,
is. I mean, it's very challenging at times. And I have a client that delivered a baby. Well, her surrogate delivered a baby about 5 months ago, actually around the same time that I had a granddaughter. And so,
congratulations.
thank you. And so finally got a girl this time after having two sons. My son who had the baby said, "Mom, I really hope it's a girl for you."
And I'm sure she's a little bit spoiled by grandma.
Just a little, just a little. Her mom does a great job too. Anyway, it's it's really important that there's that feeling of like hominess. I don't know. I'm old school, I guess.
Yeah,
People would say I'm old school. I say I'm old school. I think it's really important to make sure that people know that you're there for them. This is a service business. Unfortunately, it is still a business, but it's a field where you have to show warmth and care and kindness and sincerity.
for sure. I know that's something that's important to you. As long as I've known you, you've been involved in trying to make the field better. So,
Yeah, I mean, when I was 5, I decided I wanted to be a nurse. And um, when my mom found out, or my mom and dad found out, they're like, "Really? You want to be a nurse?" And I said, "Yeah, I really do. I've always wanted to be a nurse." So, and I knew that I wanted to go into OB, and I did OB and I did gynae, and I did some very difficult gynae cases where people had uh, end stage cancer, young people with young children, and IV pumps with just things hanging, everything was hanging there. Um, and so I became very sensitive to that. But after working and thinking about being a nurse, I mean, you're either that personality or you're not. And I am still that personality where I care and I want to know what's going on, not just with my clients and our surrogates, but with my staff. That's really important. And I call us the PLS family because we are the family that we work, everyone knows what's going on in each case because we meet each week and talk about each case. And I call it grand rounds because that's what basically it is. We talk about everything that's going on with each case, how we can solve these issues, if there are any, as a group. So, and I don't pretend to know everything. I can't know everything, but I do learn something new every day.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool approach because you're getting the broader input and perspective from your whole team on every case, right?
Right. Exactly. I'm not, and I'm the first person to say I'm wrong or I'm incorrect or I don't know the answer. But I know how to find the answer and get back to somebody. And when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
A little bit of humility and a lot of integrity goes a long way, doesn't it?
I think so. I mean, that's the way I was raised, and that's the way I worked at the hospital that I worked at. And then when I started my first agency, I really didn't know a lot about business. I really didn't know anything about business, but my husband was an accountant and a lawyer. And so he taught me a lot, and I had great role models, and I learned what I needed to learn. And he unfortunately passed away when our kids were young. They were 8 and 9. And so my boys were raised, primarily by me. And I was very attentive. And I remember going to their baseball games for a week, sitting on my chair with my notebook, because that was before the internet, my notebook of clients and my cell phone, working with people while I was at a baseball game with my kids, because that's what I had to do. You just do what you have to do.
Gosh, Nancy, I think we're peeling back the onion of some of the grit of Nancy Block, right?
Yeah.
I think
I'm an open book. I am an
yeah,
open book.
yeah. Look, I think you got to be a special person to be a nurse. I think, and I'm always so blown away by nurses every time I'm around a hospital, and
I am too. Especially good nurses.
and to be widowed early with two young kids and have a business in this field, which is all demanding and so emotional.
This is what kept me going, actually. This is my work. Anytime I have personal challenges, my work is what keeps me going. And it's important. And this client that I'm talking with recently is like, she sent me a card. She asked for my home address. And I said, I'll give you my home address as long as you promise not to send anything but a card. And she said, okay. So I said, okay. So I gave it to her and I got a card and she addressed it, My Nancy Block.
Oh,
And like, I didn't go above and beyond. I just did what I normally do. Our case managers did what they normally do, which I think is exemplary, but just she's just such a lovely person that she's grateful and happy, and she had been through a lot. And her first transfer didn't work. And things happened where she needed to have someone to talk to and now wants to talk to other people on our behalf, and just having gone through surrogacy. And that's a lovely gesture. And she texts me all the time. I have my phone here. She was talking to me all morning, and I'm like, I love you, but I have to go because I have to do a Zoom. And so we're going to talk next week. But it's that work that keeps me going, that keeps us going. And um, I hope I come off sincere. I hope people understand that we do care and we do talk about this after work. And it's important. I mean, these are people, these are experiences. Costs are getting out of control. But in order to remain competitive, unfortunately, we have to be in the same mix. And we're in the Midwest, so our fees might be a little less than somebody else, but I don't know that a difference in a small difference would make a big deal. But we're very transparent and very open about things.
Yeah, no, costs are certainly going up, and I think it's across the board. I don't think surrogacy is an exception. I think if anything, the cost of surrogacy is maybe going up faster than elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it's just post-COVID, everything's out of whack, right? With pricing across the board.
It is, and we try, even though we get frustrated with things that go on, like we don't may not hear from a doctor's office, and they may have ordered like a stat lab, but nobody tells us anything. We've been waiting for a week to hear something. We try and eliminate the frustration that we feel without conveying our feelings to intended parents or surrogates. We don't want to burden anybody.
Right.
They're paying a lot of money for service, and we promised that we would provide that service. And it's even though it's in the contract, there are things that we do that aren't in the contract because contract isn't everything, and things change.
For sure. Well, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about escrow a little bit.
Yeah,
Hey,
you would be.
you talk to clients all the time about escrow and what to expect. You probably maybe even have a better understanding of the misunderstandings about escrow than even I do, right? So what do you hear from clients around questions, concerns, misunderstandings around escrow?
Okay. Well, first of all, I didn't even know what the word escrow meant until long after I started my first business. I knew real estate escrow, but I didn't know escrow. And I soon found out. And then in the beginning in Illinois, it was allowable to hold escrow. But at the time that we were doing that, everything was fine, no misappropriations, let's just say that. And then we were not comfortable holding escrow, and then it was legally not um, something that we could do. And I was relieved because I know how to spend money, but I don't want to spend anybody else's money, and I don't want to be responsible for money. Escrow is highly important, and visibility through escrow is important, and response is important because, as you said, escrow costs and the cost of surrogacy is increasing exponentially at a rate that is much faster than I think any of us predicted or could have thought about. I never thought that we would be paying surrogates what we're paying surrogates or what intended parents are paying surrogates. I've thought of trying to reduce our agency fees because of the cost of what some surrogates would like for base compensation. But we do explain to intended parents that and surrogates too, that it's incredibly important to keep receipts. And when you work with escrow, you have one place to look for all your expenses, which makes things much easier. And so we introduce our intended parents. They make the decision first who they'd like to work with. And then the surrogate will be on board, obviously, because if parents make that decision, the surrogate is also compelled to work with the same escrow agency. So we do advise everybody that none of the funds are commingled. None of the funds are dictated by us. Every fund or reimbursement that goes back to the surrogate or to the intended parents for invoices are confirmed through escrow, through their contract, and that our escrow company, what you have a copy of the agreement and follow the agreement because that's what we need to do. And that's what's important. And that's why they feel, I think, compelled to work with an agency that doesn't hold their own escrow. There are some that do, but I wouldn't be comfortable with that because accounting is just not my thing. And I don't trust anybody else with money, unfortunately, other than a reputable, secure, insured, responsive, experienced escrow company like SeedTrust.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's listening to you talk. I think back to when we first came into the space. Like, first of all, it was 10 years ago, and the industry has evolved a lot as a whole,
Yeah, I can't
right?
believe it's been 10 years.
Yeah, we were celebrating SeaTrust 10-year anniversary this year, as of like last week. So, um, but when we came into the space, it was very different, right? I mean, it wasn't like escrow was just done differently, and it wasn't because people were doing wrong or trying to do wrong. It's just because there wasn't a better option, right?
Right.
And back then, it was one submission a month, one ledger shared a month, checks in the mail
Right.
type
Right.
scenario. And actually, the escrow companies didn't check the receipts and didn't even sometimes get the contracts. That responsibility was on the agency. So I remember when we came into the space, everybody thought I was bonkers. Because I was like, no, this should operate more like a trust company in a bank, and the escrow company should take on this liability to check the contracts and check the receipts. Otherwise, it's a facade not helping people or providing the protection it could. And at first, people A thought I was a bit crazy, and B didn't like giving up the control or the trust because we were
Mhm.
new,
Mhm.
and it was a lot of responsibility. But it's been really fun to be kind of a leader and having it change for the positive to where now all escrow companies take on that fiduciary responsibility to make sure, I think most, not all, but a lot of escrow companies now take on that responsibility to check the receipts and check the contracts. And
Mhm.
what that does is it really makes sure the money's managed fairly. You know, I always think the fairness of any, I think ease in what we do in escrow is important, and then also fairness, because the parents need to know the money is administered strictly per the contract.
Mhm.
We catch millions of dollars in mistakes in submissions a year, where and it's usually not malicious, it's something was calculated wrong. It wasn't due, it wasn't in the contract, and it had to be agreed on. These
Right.
things happen. These contracts can be quite complex. And So the parents need to know, look, if it goes through my agency or directly to the escrow company where I have two or just the escrow company set of eyes on it, I'm only going to pay for exactly what's in my contract. That's quite simple, right? The
Mhm.
surrogate also needs to know that she's going to get what's due to her in her contract
Mhm.
fairly, and that neither side can use the money to get an advantage or to get their way.
Right.
That's kind of how I think about the fairness and what I'm proud to kind of that we've really brought and pushed and led the market to where the escrow companies do that effectively
Mhm.
because it really does protect everybody. It protects the surrogate, protects the parents, and it protects all the professionals in the field too and their reputation. And I just remember the early days. You talk about pitchforks. It was fun.
Well, that's true. And, I was around, I started almost 26 years ago, and that was before the internet was really in place. I used to go
Yeah.
to, this is, really dating myself, but we used to go to Kinko's to make copies and mail out hard copies of profiles to intended parents who may not have been local. But the other thing is, it's we're also held like when escrow closes in our contracts, most of them say 24 weeks unless there's an issue with the pregnancy or delivery, and then it's open for another 4 weeks after that. We need to confirm with the surrogate that there are no outstanding invoices in the system with their insurance company. So we too, and as well as you, when we want to close escrow and parents want their money back, if there are funds in escrow still, we are compelled to wait to hear from somebody else, a third party, the insurance company.
Right.
Can the surrogate get in touch with an insurance company? We had a surrogate who, and we helped. She gave us her login information and the phone numbers and all of that, but it took weeks to get confirmation that there were no outstanding invoices and the parent wanted her money back. And we don't blame her. I mean, you might know the case, but it was our case together. But, we wanted her to get her money back. We don't want to hold her money, and I know you don't either. There's no advantage. So we are held to accountability from others, and we all do work together and try and get the information as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible.
Yeah, the financial provisions and the contracts and the reason for escrow are based on what the industry's really learned over the last 40 plus years of seeing what could happen and what could go wrong. Um,
A lot, unfortunately, a lot. And
so I
we've
think,
all learned what
yeah,
not to do. And best practice, I'm a firm believer in best practice. If it costs extra, so be it. It's a cost of doing business.
yeah, and escrow for a lot of parents and surrogates, I get it. There's so many decisions to make, right? There's like this extreme decision fatigue. They're picking the right agency, they're picking the right doctor, attorneys. I mean, so many decisions. Matt, who's the right surrogate for me? Escrow is often an afterthought. We're not that cool. I get it. But I always
You're really important. You
yeah,
might not think you're that cool, but you're important.
but it is a really involved and important part of the component of the journey, and it needs to be if it's I always say escrow is one of the cheapest expenses in the process, but if you get it wrong, it'll be the most expensive choice. So make sure you do
Well
your
said.
homework to make sure the companies have the qualifications, have the experience, as you said, have the proper bonding and oversight. And fortunately, as of recently, that there is a standard now at least people can look to. I think what we try to do at SeedTrust is set the gold standard, like an extreme standard of what's possible in terms of security and transparency and technology. And we're always pushing that envelope to try to make the experience better as a leader because we feel if we lead the industry further in that way, others follow and everybody's safer. But what's really neat is Seeds recently passed what I consider to be a minimum standard
Mhm.
that people can look to and say, look, here's safeguards. And I truly believe if an escrow company is meeting that minimal standard and they are selected, people are safer to work with them than somebody that doesn't meet that standard because it
Right,
has the proper components in place that a financial company should have to be qualified to manage people's money.
right.
So
And no
maybe
one
people
would
should,
know.
yeah,
Like you wouldn't know, I wouldn't know those questions to ask unless someone told me that you want to check on the escrow company, you want to talk about insurance and bonding and response time and who's doing what and who's got a copy of the contract and do they verify everything and are they required to contact the agency for confirmation? All of those things are things that were not in place 10 years ago.
yeah. And there's so many decisions to make. People again, and that's why I think a lot of parents and surrogates count on their agencies to make recommendations and kind of guide them in these various kind of ancillary services, if you
They're
will.
on decision overload, and especially if they interview multiple agencies, then we're introducing them to more. I mean,
Yeah,
insurance companies, escrow companies, and we do advise, of course, but we can't, it's not our place to tell someone who they have to work with.
of course.
So we offer choices and we let them know the questions. We give advice on questions to ask of each of the entities that they do have to work with. And we won't work with anyone that's new. Um, that may sound terrible, but I don't want to experience anything negative from someone who's new. And I won't work with, for instance, a trial attorney to hold escrow because I did once. A client had a relative, this person was always on trial and wasn't being represented well. And so we want all of the recommendations that we make to be the best that we can.
Absolutely. Well, Nancy, this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I always learn something more amazing about you every time we chat.
Thank
Um,
you.
if somebody who's watching this video wants to get to know you or learn more about your agency, what's the best? Remind me one more time, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I think the best way to get in touch with us is to reach out through either my email, which is Nancy@privatelabelsurrogacy.com, or our team email, because we are all on that email, and that's team@privatelabelsurrogacy.com. My phone number, my cell phone number is on my signature. People can reach me anytime. I do turn my phone off at night, or I turn it down at night. But it's important that intended parents know and surrogates know that they can reach out to us with questions. They don't have to work with us. I'm happy to help anybody and talk with anybody about what they need and give them a list of questions that they should ask.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for the time today, and I really enjoyed the chat.
Adam, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for asking. And thanks for letting us refer you, because we know that our clients are very happy.
Thank you so much.
Okay.